Also on the show, will the American Communications Regulator FCC repeal net neutrality? The vote is on as we speak. We'll tell you how it impacts your life. Why has Saudi Arabia's decision to scrap the ban on cinema halls triggered a debate in Srinagar? How has America's Jerusalem move opened a new window of opportunity for the Islamic world? And India's first indigenously built Scorpene-class submarine, INS Kalvari, is inducted into the Navy, the first in almost 2 decades. All of those stories coming up. But first, a look at what happened in Gujarat. A two-phase election concluded today. The results are expected on Monday, and these are the big takeaways from the exit poll projections beamed by various television channels across India. Despite 22 years in anti-incumbency, the BJP is set to retain power in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state of Gujarat. That is the verdict, the unanimous verdict of all exit polls this evening. It is expected to get anywhere up to 110 seats in the 182-member assembly. The Congress is projected to fail yet again. It is expected to be routed in the hill state of Himachal Pradesh as well. The poll of polls gives the BJP 110 seats, the Congress 72 seats. The C voter exit poll, if you break it down and look at every individual poll, the C voter exit poll to begin with, predicting 108 seats to the BJP, 74 for the Congress party in the state of Gujarat. The Times Now VMR poll gives 109 to the BJP, 70 seats to the Congress party. The India Today Axis poll has given 99 to 113 seats to the BJP, 68 to 82 seats to the Congress party. The CSDS also giving a victory to the BJP. It says the BJP will win 93 out of the 142 seats for which it was projecting the results till we last checked. The Congress likely to get 48 of these seats. Let's turn to Himachal Pradesh, another state, a small hill state that also went to the polls. The poll of polls gives the BJP 48 seats, the Congress 19. The India Today Axis poll says the BJP will win 47 to 55 of the 68 seats. The ruling Congress party is expected to slump to anywhere between 13 to 20 seats. Joining us this evening is Dalip Tahil. He's an actor, a famous actor, joining us from Mumbai this evening. Good evening, Dalip. We've spoken to journalists, we've spoken to politicians, both from the ruling party and the opposition, and they've all given their view on the numbers. How do you see the exit poll results?
Well, a very good evening to you, and thank you for having me on your program. I must say at the outset that I am no political pundit, but what I can say is that Shri Narendra Modi ji has proven from the time he became Prime Minister that the mandate and the support of the people is with him, and he has swiftly gone past the Congress who were a cumbersome government. They didn't do any of the things that they said they would do, and now that Narendra Modi ji has gone ahead and implemented everything and the things that he said, all they can do is criticize him. They expected an upset in UP straight after demonetization. That had the opposite effect. And for me, I think Gujarat is going to be the same. I think the country and everybody, and the majority of the nation, the young people, everybody has given Narendra Modi ji the mandate, and I think it's going to remain that way. He never said that GST and demonetization was going to be a magic wand. Yes, there are going to be difficulties, but the Congress, for the years that they were there, for 10 years, they say they were the authors of the GST, and yet they had a renowned a financial intellect, an intellectual man who was financially considered, sort of an author of economics, was Dr. Manmohan Singh. And the stage was set, and yet they didn't implement GST. They were a cumbersome government. They had lost it. I mean, they were completely complacent, and now they've been overtaken, and all they can do is criticize, a prime minister who's willing to go out there and take courageous decisions and do things that he has the complete support of the public. To call GST a Gabbar Singh tax, I think is very immature. Considering that Congress say they were the authors of the GST, then, I mean, it just goes to show as to how far away they are from the thinking of modern India and the kind of progress that is being supported by the Indian people.
You say you're no political pundit, and yet it was very interesting to hear you speak about this election, and elections are about people, so it's good to have your take. Politicians go through this every 5 years. As an actor, I think you look at how the people vote for a movie every Friday. So I'm sure you can relate to at some level on what goes on in these political camps and how they prepare. Eventually, you just have to. What do you think worked for the BJP and what did not work for Rahul Gandhi, who apparently on social media was doing quite well?
Well, I mean, you know, there's, for me, Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of this country, has picked India by its, you know, to put it very crudely, by the scruff of its neck. It was down in the dumps with the Congress. He has picked up this country. He's moving ahead with it. He has the mandate. And as we say in the movie industry, I mean, the initial reports, when the movie opens on Friday morning, we always get the initial reports, which is like your exit polls. And judging by your exit polls, which I'm told is not the most accurate thing in the world, but I don't need to rely on exit polls. I don't for a moment think that Gujarat is going to be any different to what UP was. And I think Mr. Narendra Modi ji and the BJP is going to sweep Gujarat. Also, it's very clear that, you know, a chief ministerial candidate was not announced because Narendra Modi ji is the spearhead. He is on center stage, not only in the nation, but certainly in Gujarat. I don't think there's any question of that it'll not be a sweeping sort of verdict in favor of Narendra Modi ji.
Any words of advice for Rahul Gandhi as he takes on the mantle of Congress president?
Well, I mean, you know, I don't want to put it in a way that I have any advice for Mr. Rahul Gandhi. I mean, I congratulate him in becoming, you know, the head of the Congress party. But really, they have to get a little mature and come in contact with what the Indian nation wants, the progress that is being made, and begin to think in terms of some ideas. Begin to give some concrete and give some contributions that help this nation go forward, rather than just criticizing a person who has absolutely exposed their cumbersome and their lethargy over the past 10 years. I mean, they stand exposed, and that is what they can't take. And they're still going around saying and criticizing him, and all of it is backfiring, because the fact of the matter remains that it's having exactly the opposite effect on the people. And I can't understand how the Congress think tank hasn't been able to figure this out. I mean, it's really baffling that they can be so disconnected.
Indeed it is, and clearly visiting the temples hasn't got them any blessings, neither from the gods nor from the people of Gujarat, if the exit polls are to be believed. Dileep Tahil, pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us. It's not over till it's over, and it'll be over on.
Thank you.
Yes, it'll be over on Monday when we have the final results. But let's put this in perspective for those of you joining us and who've not followed politics in Gujarat. It was the second and final phase of polling in the state today. Indians saw the best and worst of politics in the run-up to these polls. So what's at stake really in the state? For the BJP, it's a prestige battle. Gujarat, as we've been saying, is the Prime Minister's home state. He was its chief minister for 12 years. For the Congress party, the Gujarat elections are a battle for survival. Kartikeya Sharma reports.
The state, Gujarat. The players, Gujarat's own Narendra Modi and Congress's new president, Rahul Gandhi. At stake, prestige and survival. Gujarat saw an intense showdown between Rahul Gandhi and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Both campaigned extensively but differed in the style and substance of their outreach to voters. The only thing which was similar was that both started each campaigning day by visiting a temple. This time, Rahul wore soft Hindutva on his sleeve. He was seen wearing Rudraksh and Tilak, which remained on his forehead through the day.
Distraction करते रहते मगर इस बार सफल नहीं होगा. इस बार गुजरात ने मन बना लिया है.
In a first, Congress started its campaign way earlier than BJP. It crafted a poll campaign around economic issues while not allowing leaders to attack the Prime Minister directly. Manishankar Iyer was suspended for his nasty jibe at Modi. Senior leaders were denied helicopters, and all leaders were asked to go door to door and on the road. The Congress also decided to rely on humor, and some of its social media campaigns went viral. The BJP, on the other hand, went for a high-pitched campaign.
શ્રીમાન મણિશંકર અય્યર એમણે કહ્યું આ મોદી તો નીચ જાતિનો છે, આ મોદી તો નીચ છે.
Most leaders, in order to polarize the electorate, spoke on issues like Pakistan and curfew Raj. Since the Congress relied on Patidar agitation, the BJP tried pitting nationalism against caste-based alliance. Their effort was to ensure that they retain seats in urban areas. Posters called Ahmed Patel Congress's chief ministerial candidate. The campaign was built around Gujarati pride and Narendra Modi. The sole focus remained on Rahul Gandhi. Despite the Mandir and Neech gaffe by Congress leaders, Rahul Gandhi ensured that the pitch remained on economic issues. Whatever the result may be, Congress gave the BJP, which has ruled the state for 22 years, a tough fight. WION.
So we've seen the worst kind of campaigning, the worst kind of mudslinging during this election, in the run-up to this election. Now the BJP is talking about the development agenda, saying that's what the voter in Gujarat voted on, and that's why the BJP is projected to win. It cannot win on hypocrisy. Those are the words, the Congress party cannot win on hypocrisy, are the words of the Defence Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman. I spoke to her just a few minutes back on the exit poll results. Listen. The exit polls showing a BJP win both in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh. Your first reaction to the numbers?
Well, very much the way we wanted it to be. And I would still say it's an exit poll. We'll wait for the final results. We were sure, and we are sure, that the people of Gujarat prefer development over all kinds of caste-based, community-based, and division of society in the name of appeasing people. Gujarat has seen good development over nearly 2 decades. And people are not in a mood to get carried away by the narrative which Congress has built around its campaign, having outsourced its leadership to people who have just come with the name of caste reservation or caste-based politics. So no wonder the people have seen through the Congress's game. And that is where I think the exit polls are very much in line with what we've expected, that Gujarat will not prefer divisionary politics.
Nirmala ji, Kartike here. What, in your opinion, has led to the results which exit polls are showing in Gujarat? Because if you look at the campaign, the Bharatiya Janata Party's campaign was far more focused on central issues. Congress campaign was far more focused on GST, economic and other issues. In retrospect, what has worked for your party?
Which are also central.
Well, you can say that GST is also central, but what has worked for BJP?
I think people have seen a trustworthy government, a government which walks the talk, essentially a government which has all these 20 to 25 years shown that it keeps up its promises. Had it only had a favorable central government during the earlier periods when the present Prime Minister was the Chief Minister, a lot more rapid progress could have happened. But even without worrying about it, we've overcome a lot of difficulties. And even in the context of, as you raised, the GST, people have realized that in principle they're all with the tax GST. But in the implementation, if there has been any difficulty, or even in the decision of the fitment, the tax rate fitment, if there have been any questions, here was a government which was willing to listen to them, come back to them, try to tweak the GST in such a way that the grievances are redressed and so on. So the people of Gujarat have seen that this was a government which was responsive and therefore was reacting to problems which were being posed by the voters, the citizens.
Well, exit polls,
Congress has misread that as anger against the government,
right?
Which is not right.
Exit polls, ma'am, have been wrong before. What was your calculation? What numbers did you think that your party will get in this election?
Well, I will definitely see, it's one thing for us to target and work towards a certain number. But for me to speculate on what I will arrive at will be too difficult and it will not be fair. We will work towards the number we've set for ourselves, and which is what we've done organizationally. The leadership was all there, full force, working organization, every karyakarta at the booth level, the workers were all at it for nearly a couple of months. And therefore, the organizational strength, together with the local leadership, and of course, the Prime Minister and the party president, national president, both hailing from Gujarat, gave their maximum time there.
Nirmala, sorry, this is a question I really wanted to ask. Is it also because when the UP election took place, Nirmala ji, demonetization was an issue on which the Congress had launched the campaign? People voted for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He got more than 300 seats. Again, GST was a campaign point which was started from Surat. Do you think it's also reflecting a change in Indian public's mood whereby they stand with tough economic decisions taken by centre? Is it a reflection of that?
Absolutely. People are able to see that here is a government, and particularly a Prime Minister, who very clearly states his intention and publicly says that it is for the benefit of the people and carries it through. And even if there are odds or difficulties that people face, they are definitely being addressed, and therefore people see there is a point in trusting the Prime Minister who delivers on his promise. On the contrary, the fact is that Congress is today completely disconnected from the ground. It misread the situation, it continues to misread the situation. The alliance it formed in UP, much against the people's will, threw them out. Now, the kind of outsourcing that they've done to the caste-based leaders, people have rejected it. They're continuously misreading ground-level realities. As a result, Congress is in no position to feel the pulse. On the contrary, in our side, because people trust the sincerity with which Prime Minister is implementing his policies, people are, in spite of some challenges that they have to face, are seeing a responsive government, and therefore the difference.
You're watching Gravitas. A big showdown is brewing between the Trump administration and internet users in the United States. A plan has been hatched to deregulate internet service providers in the country, essentially removing all the net neutrality requirements that companies now need to fulfill. But netizens around America, indeed around the world, are trying to mount pressure to scrap these plans. Here's a report.
Net neutrality is under threat yet again in the United States. The country's telecom regulator, the Federal Communications Commission, wants to scrap the Obama-era fair internet rules. At the middle of the row is FCC's Commissioner Ajit Pai. He wants to scrap existing net neutrality laws. Pai feels the changes will not hamper the internet usage experience in any way.
Some of these telcos could hold streaming services like Netflix hostage by demanding more money from them. Do you worry about that?
Well, I think the key word in your question is could. This is all entirely hypothetical. We have never seen that in the 20 years or so that the commercial internet has existed. And going forward, we require transparency, as I said, to make sure that any practice like that would be disclosed. And we empower the Federal Trade Commission to take action against any company, big or small, that's behaving in an anti-competitive way or otherwise harming consumers.
Ajit Pai's move has caused outrage across America. Netizens are up in arms against the FCC. They are raising their voice through protests. Several citizens have also written to the FCC and their lawmakers demanding a rollback of the new proposals. Experts say Ajit Pai's defense is based on a flawed argument.
The argument that Commissioner Pai has made is, well, what happened in the prior 20 years when we didn't have these regulations in place? And I think that the answer to that question is, well, in the prior 20 years, we didn't have nearly as much commerce. We didn't have the video streaming that we do today. And that because of that, we really don't have the history that he's pointing to support the idea that deregulation is a good thing.
Activists say that they are ready to mount a legal challenge if the FCC votes to scrap net neutrality. But the FCC chief doesn't seem concerned by the protest for now. Bureau Report, WION.
Let's go straight to our guests. With us from California, Jeff Cow, data scientist and Bigelow refugee seeking, opportunities in data. That's what his CV says. From Michigan, US, we have Florian Schaub, assistant professor at the University of Michigan School of Information. And from New Delhi, Rajan Matthew, Director General of the COAI. Thank you all for joining us and good evening to all of you. Jeff, let's begin with you. For the layperson, what is happening today? What is this vote and how will it change our lives if they vote in favor of the motion?
Sure, yeah. So the vote's actually happening in about 30 minutes, 11:30 on the East Coast. And I think, I can only speak for myself, but I think it is a little concerning as to what the loosening of the regulation, how it could allow those here in the United States to have more freedom to, block throttle traffic. So it's, from a personal perspective, it's a little concerning. And, anytime you have that sort of uncertainty, I think, there's definitely a lot of worry about what they could do.
Okay. Florian, do you want to put it in perspective for our viewers? Why is this vote important and why have the efforts of netizens not paid off, or are they going to pay off? How do you see this going?
Yeah, so the reason this is important is that net neutrality is really the basis to enable innovation and competition as well as openness in the internet, right? Without net neutrality, basically internet service providers can charge their consumers on one hand, but they cannot, or their customers, but they can also charge companies like Netflix and other companies to make sure that traffic actually gets to the consumers. In other areas, that's called racketeering. Right. So the reason why this vote is important is if this goes through, we might see large changes in how the internet economy works. And Ajit Pai says, well, these are hypotheticals, and yes, they are hypotheticals. But the reason we have the current net neutrality rules, which are just 2 years old, is to protect against these hypotheticals.
Rajan Matthew, how is what's happening in the US going to impact the life of an Indian, say someone like me who uses the internet? Why should it matter to me?
Well, it matters to us because the TRAI has adopted and recommended to the licensor, which is the DOT, the existing net neutrality definitions as it stands, which is what Mr. Pai is looking to overturn. So, of course, from the operator perspective, we had really supported more or less Mr. Pai's position that the internet should really be free. Yes, we support that, but there's no necessity to start putting in what we call ex-ante type of prohibitions. And Mr. Pai said, listen, especially in the US and also in India, there are ample regulations and rules already in place. Mr. Pai pointed out that if you look at the Sherman Antitrust Act, these issues of throttling and no prioritization are already embedded in these regulations. And so therefore, if there is a violation of this, they can be prosecuted under those existing rules. And that's the same position that we indicated here in India, that yes, there's really no need to put all of these ex-ante regulations in place. There are plenty of consumer protection laws, anti-competitive laws, all of those in place, and those should be used to ensure that the neutrality and, if you will, the freedom of the internet is preserved. In India, we have the added responsibility of connecting the next 1 billion unconnected. We need innovative means and not these straitjackets to be able to do that connectivity.
Jeff, some reports say that 18 attorneys generals have called on the FCC, the regulator, to cancel this repeal vote over millions of fake comments. What have you heard?
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well. And there's been a lot of research out there, including my own, that found a lot of fake comments in the FCC public record. So these comments are sort of meant to reflect public opinion. And for some reason, there's been a lot of essentially, bot submitted comments, particularly suspicious from sort of the industry side. And, I think it's really important to dig deeper into them. In the U.S., there's been a lot of concern lately about sort of how the public conversation can be hijacked, by organizations with, whether state actors or companies, organizations with a lot of means. And, right now it's a very touchy subject. My research is exposed at least 1.3 million of these sort of manufactured comments. The Attorney General of New York has indicated that he's found 2 million where individuals have had their identity stolen in order to submit these comments. Because, at the end of the day, when you submit a comment, putting your identity out there into the public record, and for example, dead people's emails and addresses being used to submit these pro-industry. So there's a lot of very concerning implications for the public conversation in the U.S. Because of.
Florian, I'm quoting from one of the things that I read today. Net neutrality is a secret sauce that has made the internet awesome. Is there enough awareness about the secret sauce existing? And do people know how a repeal of this could kill the internet as we know it today?
Yeah, I don't think there's sufficient awareness of the potential implications of this. So the way net neutrality is portrayed, especially by the FCC at the moment, is kind of as this bad thing that's preventing innovation and prevents us from prevents the ISPs from investing into infrastructure, and that's not really the case, right? Like, because we had net neutrality for a long time, or at least for the longest time, ISPs were not really interested in prioritizing different types of traffics. They kind of understood themselves as similar to utility companies. The net neutrality rules kind of enforce that on them. They kind of have to behave neutral, similar to how your power provider can't make your electric car charge less unless Tesla pays you more, right? So Raj spoke about kind of regulation creating straitjackets for this integration. I think that's not really the issue. The issue is more that we're basically preventing from the ISPs creating straitjackets for consumers because they hold a lot of power. And this powerful role could mean that they can basically regulate what you get to see, right? On your computer, on your phone. They can say, oh, you want video streaming? That's $5 more a month. That's $10 more. Actually, we don't support any free speech content on our network, and that's a big problem. And you can say, well, let's let the market sort that out, right? They need to be transparent about that. The problem in the US is that in most areas, particularly in rural areas, you don't have a choice who your ISP is, who your internet service provider is. You have maybe one company, only one company in your area. If you have two companies, you're already lucky. Yes, there are some cities, larger cities and urban areas where you might have 3-4 different providers, but if they all react in the same way, which is anti-consumer, then to this change in the rules, then you basically don't have a choice, and you don't have any real level of recourse because it's going to be transparent, right? And the FTC can only go, they can just tell you, oh, we're going to be throttling this, or we're not going to show you this type of content, and that does not violate the FTC Act.
Right. I'll have to leave it at that. Jeff Cow, Florian and Rajan Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. The vote hasn't begun just yet, but let's tell you what will be the impact of the repeal of net neutrality. Some netizens have come up with their own estimates. The cost of an internet plan could rise substantially. If Ajit Pai's plans go through, users will be subjected to pay extra for high-speed access to their favorite websites or apps, and this could run into hundreds of dollars every month. And this will be like how you would pay for your television plan. There will be a basic cost, and then on top of that, you will have to pay extra for your favorite sports or news channel or that favorite movie that you may want to watch. And if it's in high definition, you pay extra yet again. The internet will not be treated as a utility, and the end user could end up bearing additional costs to access social media websites, video streaming services, or even a simple Google search. That's how it's going to change your life. What is net neutrality? If it is indeed a complex subject and we're breaking it down here, the concept is quite simple actually. All data exchange in any form, whether it is text, images or video, must get equal treatment on the internet. That is the basic principle. This essentially means that the internet service provider cannot at the moment discriminate or give preferential treatment to any content provider. In other words, they cannot speed up or slow down your internet speed when you open anything on the internet. Changes to this principle are essentially going to affect every internet user in the United States to begin with. If American internet service providers get the FCC's nod, which they probably will after this vote, they will get power to decide who fails or succeeds on the internet. And this can play out in different ways. Service providers could charge you additionally to access specific websites or services, or they could even charge the companies to ensure steady and high-speed access to their content. And this would mean that the users will be charged more money by the telecom operators in one way or the other. Essentially, the burden passes on to the consumer, and new companies, especially startups, will not get a level playing field. Why is the US government pushing for a change to net neutrality rules? The current Trump administration is seen as pro-deregulation and deregularization. And especially Ajit Pai, the man at the helm, he's the current chief of the FCC. He had voted against the 2015 Open Internet Order. Before initiating the process to scrap net neutrality in the United States, he closed an investigation into zero rating practices against 3 service providers. Zero rating is a practice by internet service providers which allows users to access certain apps without spending their monthly data limits. What about net neutrality in India? India so far has taken a principled approach on this matter. Telecom regulator TRAI took a pro-net neutrality stand when Facebook and Airtel tried to introduce zero-rated services and plans by banning their rollout. But telecom operators, during many consultations, have often pitched for anti-net neutrality practices, seeking a more liberal approach. When President Donald Trump announced that the United States will recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, WION read out the lines no other media focused on. That the US president had also stressed that there was no, quote-unquote, final decision on the disputed boundaries and divided nature of the holy city. Most media coverage foresaw unmitigated bloodshed emanating from the announcement. We at WION sensed something else. That the unpredictable US president was actually opening a window of opportunity, perhaps, to the Islamic world. It's happening again. Senior foreign editor Padma Rao reports.
It was a meeting waiting to happen. Few eyebrows were raised when Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan earlier this week called for a one-day emergency meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, in Istanbul to come together to jointly oppose United States President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. After all, both the Islamic world and Israel have claimed the city as their own, even though 3 of the world's oldest faiths have some of their holiest shrines there. The lead was taken by Mr. Erdogan, and he made all the expected noises. He spewed fire and thunder at the Israelis and the Americans and declared that there can be no debate over the status of Jerusalem.
Today we declared that we recognize Jerusalem as East Palestine's capital. From now on, the capital of the state of Palestine will be Jerusalem in our eyes, and it will remain that way.
But that was the last anyone heard of an entity called Occupied Jerusalem. By the evening, a joint communique had been issued, and it is this statement that is evidence that WION's reading of the intriguing developments in the Middle East are accurate. President Trump had thrown the world a challenge by underlining the disputed nature of Jerusalem, even as he recognized very obviously Israel's sovereignty over its western part only. The Islamic world has just taken up that challenge by calling for a recognition not of unified Jerusalem, not of occupied Jerusalem, but of East Jerusalem, quote-unquote, as Palestine's capital. The American president's nuanced speech left East Jerusalem open. The Islamic world's communique has demanded East Jerusalem. Is this a next tentative step? And will there be further progress? President Trump's announcement has been condemned by many of his own allies who either failed or chose to fail to read the fine text of his speech. The Islamic world is deeply divided over Iran and the support it offers to Hezbollah, the militia organization in Lebanon too. Saudi Arabia's leaders stayed away from the emergency meeting of the OIC, as did those of its allies Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. Sunni Saudi Arabia's aggressive condemnation of Shia Iran is nothing new, nor is Saudi Arabia's clout within the OIC. But the budding relationship of Saudi Arabia and its allies to Israel, the avowed Zionist enemy, quote-unquote, is the real novelty. While the conference in Istanbul on a subject that is surely the most important for Muslims, that is Jerusalem, was taking place, Saudi television aired the weather bulletin. Saudi Arabia's Prince Salman did pay lip service through the usual utterances of support to Palestine. But in the context of President Trump and Israel, his newfound friends, he spoke of East and East Jerusalem alone. Some hours later, it was East Jerusalem, in quotes, that found its way into the communique in Istanbul. Whether it remains there will depend on the determination of the leadership, both in East and West Jerusalem. Padma Rao, WION.
The Indian Navy had reason to cheer when the Scorpion-class submarine Kalvari joined the fleet. It is the first diesel-electric sub to be commissioned in many years. In fact, the Navy's Kilo-class and HDW-class submarines are quite old and need to be replaced. Kalvari's arrival, although delayed, is a huge relief. It's the first completely indigenized Scorpion submarine that has been inducted into the Indian Navy. Here's a report.
After a gap of 17 years, the Indian Navy's submarine fleet finally got a shot in the arm with the Prime Minister commissioning the Kalvari, a diesel-electric submarine built in India in a technology transfer agreement with DCNS of France.
ये पनडुब्बी भारत और फ्रांस की तेजी से बढ़ती स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप का भी एक उत्कृष्ट उदाहरण है। साथियों, ये वर्ष भारतीय नौसेना की सबमरीन आर्म का स्वर्ण जयंती वर्ष है।
Why is the Kalvari important? It is the first diesel-electric sub to join the Indian Navy in 17 years. It will bolster India's aging fleet of 14 diesel-electric submarines. 9 are Russian-made Kilo-class subs, and barring one, the rest are in their third decade of service. 4 other subs are of German origin, all old and getting older. The Kalvari displaces 1,870 tons, lighter than the 2,300-ton Kilo. It has a range of 1,020 kilometers and a top speed of 20 knots. It can stay at sea for 50 days, 45 for the Kilo. Its paint, hull, fin and hydroplanes are designed for minimum underwater resistance. All equipment on board is mounted on cradles to reduce shock. All weapons and sensors are integrated into the combat system. The ship is armed with torpedoes and Exocet anti-ship missiles.
नौसेना के बेड़े में कलवरी का जुड़ना रक्षा क्षेत्र में हमारी तरफ से उठाया गया एक बहुत बड़ा कदम है। इसे बनाने में भारतीयों का पसीना लगा है, भारतीयों की शक्ति लगी है। ये मेक इन इंडिया का एक उत्तम उदाहरण है।
Kalvari will carry out a wide range of missions including surface warfare, mine laying, intelligence gathering and surveillance. It is considered ideal for littoral warfare, meaning it will be highly effective in the Indian Ocean. 5 more submarines of the same class will join the fleet, with the last targeted for commissioning in 2020. The second in line after Kalvari is the Khanderi, now undergoing sea trials, which should be commissioned in March next year, followed by the Karanj in late 2018. Bureau Report, WION.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thanks very much for watching.